Hey there, and welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and get straight to the insights you need to stay ahead. Today, we're plunging into some, well, truly compelling material. We're drawing primarily from the Datapro Newsletter's AI Governance Reality Check piece from August 2025. It really unpacks Australia's Voluntary AI Safety Standard, and let's just say it's a lot more significant than it might first appear.
Yeah, industry insiders are calling this whole situation a regulatory mirage. So our mission today is to sort of pull back the curtain on why these seemingly voluntary standards are, well, anything but. And what that critically means for you, whether you're developing AI, deploying it, or even just interacting with AI systems day to day. We'll explore the hidden strategies and, the direct impact on your operations.
That's a perfect framing. What's truly fascinating here is the strategic way governments often introduce guidance. It looks flexible, maybe even optional on the surface. But in reality, it's meticulously paving a very clear, almost inevitable compliance pathway. For you, our listener, this means understanding not just what the rules are, but why they're being introduced this way, and how this quiet groundwork is going to fundamentally reshape the future of AI in practice.
Okay, that idea of a regulatory mirage is so vivid. And the Data Pro newsletter also uses another really powerful term, the dual track deception, to describe Australia's approach here. Can you unpack what they mean by this dual track deception? Why is it such a critical insight for anyone in the AI space?
Absolutely. It's essentially a clever regulatory maneuver. So the Australian government has put forward what looks like a two-pronged strategy. On one track, you have these voluntary AI safety standards. They're intended for broad adoption across all AI implementations, right?
Like the general ones.
Then on the second track, they've proposed mandatory guardrails, specifically designed just for high-risk AI applications. Now, here's the critical bit, the deception, if you will, that many organizations seem to be missing. The first 9 proposed mandatory guardrails are identical. I mean, word for word identical to their voluntary counterparts.
Wow, okay. Identical. So the implications there are pretty profound, aren't they? If these voluntary standards are basically blueprints for future mandates.
Well, the strategic play here isn't just about avoiding future headaches, is it? It sounds like it's about maybe establishing market leadership, building deeper trust, and actually shaping how AI works in your organization instead of just reacting later. Exactly. That's spot on. This structural alignment creates what the experts are calling a compliance pathway. It's a strong signal. It tells us that for certain applications, it's really not a question of if these standards become legally binding, but when. And the groundwork for those future legal obligations, it's being laid right now through these seemingly optional measures. Organizations that see this as a dry run, an opportunity to build robust governance now, they're the ones who will gain a real competitive edge.
Okay, so moving beyond the policy talk, the newsletter really stresses that these aren't just like aspirational principles. They're described as a comprehensive technical framework, one that's designed to fundamentally impact how engineering teams actually build and operate AI systems. Can you walk us through what a few of these 10 guardrails practically demand from, say, the technical side?
Certainly. Each one maps directly to tangible, often quite complex implementation requirements. Let's start with accountability and governance. This isn't just about writing a policy document and sticking it on a shelf. No, it mandates defining clear, really granular roles and responsibilities for every single stage of the AI system lifecycle.
From data acquisition all the way to retirement.
All the way. And it also means ensuring your technical staff, your engineers, your data scientists are not just aware of responsible AI practices, but are actually trained to implement them effectively. It's about embedding these ethical and responsible considerations right into the technical workflow, into the culture.
Okay, so building that capability and culture internally, not just ticking a box. Got it. What about model testing and monitoring? That sounds like it could be a constant evolving challenge.
Oh, it absolutely is. This guardrail requires building robust infrastructure for continuous monitoring. You're not just testing a model once before you deploy it. You need systems running all the time to detect what's called model drift. That's where the model's performance degrades because the real-world data it sees starts diverging from its training data.
Which happens all the time, presumably.
All the time. You also need to track performance degradation generally, identify any unintended behaviors.
Yeah.
And all of this needs to be benchmarked against predefined, rigorous acceptance criteria. It means investing in tools, telemetry, automated alerts, essentially ensuring ongoing reliability and fairness.
And human control and intervention. In a world where we're often striving for more autonomy in systems, how do you balance that with, keeping humans in the loop?
That's a really critical tension. This guardrail demands designing systems with actual meaningful ways for humans to intervene. It's not enough to just say a human could step in. The system architecture has to facilitate it. Think clear dashboards, maybe kill switches, or approval workflows built right in. And it doesn't stop at your internal systems. It extends to monitoring multiple components across your AI supply chain. So if you're using third-party models or services, you need visibility and, ideally, potential control points within those external dependencies, too, to maintain that meaningful human oversight.
Wow, that's a lot for engineering teams to grapple with, especially when designing things from the get-go. The newsletter highlights Guardrail 9, record keeping for compliance, as maybe the most overlooked piece. Why is documentation, good old documentation, suddenly so critical here?
Yeah, it sounds mundane, but it's vital. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this guardrail mandates keeping comprehensive records specifically to allow for third-party compliance assessment. So it's not just for your internal notes. These records establish an auditable trail. They become the evidentiary foundation for demonstrating compliance and for proving that your risk management strategies are actually effective.
Evidentiary foundation. Okay, that sounds serious.
It is. Imagine an AI system causes harm or makes a clearly biased decision. These detailed records, covering everything from where the data came from, model choices, test results, logs of human interventions, they become your primary defense. In an environment where AI failures can lead to huge legal costs, financial penalties, reputational damage, these records are genuinely crucial assets for protecting the organization. They are your proof of diligence. Seriously.
That totally reframes documentation. Not a chore, but a strategic asset. Okay. In Guardrail 8, supply chain transparency, you touched on this. This must really hit home for many organizations, right? Especially since most are probably deployers of third-party AI, not building everything themselves from scratch. What does this interconnected web of risk really mean for them?
It means you absolutely have to develop procurement strategies that explicitly include AI governance assessments. For any third-party system you acquire or integrate, period. You need to establish clear transparency requirements with your suppliers. Ask them about their data, their models, their systems. How are they trained? What data did they use? What are their risk assessment processes?
So asking the tough questions.
Exactly. And furthermore, the Datapro Newsletter points out something important. Australia's heavy reliance on foreign-developed AI models and cloud services. This raises broader strategic concerns. Things like national security, data sovereignty. So your compliance strategy needs to think about these bigger geopolitical risks too, not just the technical stuff inside your own walls. It might mean reevaluating vendors, really digging into your supply chain.
It definitely sounds like a lot of organizations are grappling with how to implement these, especially given some of the ambiguity still in the framework. What are some of the biggest, most common challenges the newsletter highlights?
Well, one of the most significant challenges is what's being called the high-risk definition dilemma. The current framework defines high risk based on potential adverse impacts on human rights, health, safety, legal rights, which sounds reasonable on the face of it.
Sure.
But it offers very limited practical guidance on how to actually classify systems. This ambiguity leaves a lot of room for interpretation, and organizations are struggling to figure out, is my specific AI system high risk or not? For instance, experts in the University of Sydney raised concerns. They worried we might end up classifying all general-purpose AI, GPAI models as high-risk by default.
Right. And if all GPAI models, like those big foundational models everyone uses, are automatically high risk, that could create a massive compliance burden, couldn't it? Especially for, say, countless lower-risk uses. If I'm running a small business, that kind of blanket classification could really tie up my limited resources unnecessarily. What does that ambiguity do to innovation?
Precisely. You hit the nail on the head. For a smaller entity, labeling everything high risk could genuinely stifle innovation and adoption. It forces them to pour resources into compliance for systems that might pose minimal actual risk, pulling focus away from developing valuable applications. This dilemma really highlights a tension, doesn't it, between wanting comprehensive regulation and needing to foster an agile, innovative AI ecosystem. It's a key area where more specific guidance is really needed.
That lack of clarity must make planning resources and strategy incredibly difficult. And the newsletter points out something quite telling. Even the government itself has faced challenges with this, which kind of underscores the complexity, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. A 2024 Australian National Audit Office, the ANAO review, found governance arrangements in some government agencies, like the Tax Office, were only partly effective. They lacked specific AI risk management plans, had undefined roles. things like that.
Wow, even the government agencies.
Right. Now, if even well-resourced government bodies with dedicated teams, direct access to the policy folks, if they're struggling to meet these standards, what does that say about the huge challenge facing private companies, especially those without big, dedicated compliance teams? It really highlights what the newsletter calls the implementation gap. AI adoption is racing ahead, but the governance efforts are lagging behind. It's a pretty stark warning signal for the private sector.
Definitely a warning signal. So pulling this all together, what does this mean for you, our listener? Whether you're deep in AI development or just trying to navigate this world shaped by it, is Australia's approach here unique, or is this part of a bigger global shift towards more AI governance?
Australia's framework is very deliberate in how it aligns with major international standards. Think of ISO IEC 42001.2023. That's the international standard for AI management systems. And also the U.S. NIST AI risk management framework, which is gaining a lot of traction globally. This strategic alignment offers a potential global compliance advantage. It could position organizations for easier access to international markets if they adopt these standards early.
Okay, so there's a global angle.
Yes, but it also raises a really important question. Compared to, say, the EU's AI Act, which is much more prescriptive, it has legally binding rules, even outright bans on certain AI uses. Will Australia's currently voluntary framework prove sufficient as global expectations for AI governance continue to harden and evolve? It certainly highlights why you need to look beyond just national borders. You have to consider that broader global regulatory picture.
So the smart move, it seems clear, is to be proactive. Not wait and see. The newsletter offers what it calls a proactive compliance playbook, aimed at engineering managers, but frankly, it seems relevant for anyone involved in AI strategy. What are the key actionable takeaways for you if you're wanting to get ahead of this curve?
The recommendations are very clear, very actionable, things you can start doing, well, today. First, under immediate actions. Start treating these voluntary guardrails as operational requirements now, not as mere suggestions. This means focus on establishing clear accountability, integrating AI-specific risk management into your existing frameworks, and building that scalable monitoring infrastructure for your AI systems today.
Okay, treat voluntary as mandatory, essentially.
In practice, yes.
Yeah.
Second, risk assessment integration. Develop flexible frameworks. Frameworks that can accommodate those evolving high-risk definitions we talked about. Think about modular architectures, maybe data tagging strategies, dynamic classification models, things that can adapt as the rules shift, rather than hard-coding static categories. Agility will be key.
Makes sense. Flexible frameworks.
Third, supply chain governance. Implement rigorous vendor assessment processes, ones that specifically evaluate the AI governance capabilities of your third-party providers. Get clear transparency requirements in your contracts. Mandate adherence to these standards. Don't just trust your vendors on this. Verify.
Right. Trust, but verify.
Fourth, documentation and audit preparation. Remember that evidentiary foundation. View comprehensive record-keeping as a strategic asset, not just a bureaucratic burden. Invest in robust systems to track data provenance, model development, testing, deployment decisions. It'll be invaluable later for compliance and risk mitigation.
Okay, documentation as an asset. Got it.
And finally, number 5, international alignment. Design your governance frameworks from the beginning to accommodate multiple regulatory jurisdictions. Think about how your approach aligns not just with Australia, but with the EU AI Act, the US NIST framework, other emerging global guidelines. This kind of forward-thinking approach is what will truly position you for global market access and, frankly, sustained leadership in this space.
This deep dive really shows us, doesn't it, that Australia's Voluntary AI Safety Standard isn't just some abstract policy guidance. It's really a foundational preview of a regulatory environment that's going to fundamentally reshape how we all develop and deploy AI. The organizations that recognize this dual-track deception, that see it as a stepping stone to mandatory requirements, they're the ones who are going to find themselves with a significant competitive advantage. They'll be building trust, fostering responsible innovation, and navigating future regulations with, well, far greater agility.
Precisely. You've summed it up perfectly. The regulatory landscape is evolving incredibly fast, but the direction of travel is clear. AI governance is shifting from just being best practice to becoming a legal requirement. Those who act on this reality today, understanding the nuances of this regulatory mirage and preparing comprehensively, they will be positioned not just to comply, but to actually lead in tomorrow's regulated environment.
And that leaves us with the provocative thought for you to consider. If we understand that these voluntary guardrails are indeed laying the groundwork for mandatory compliance, What opportunities are we perhaps missing? Or what risks are we unknowingly taking on by not approaching them with the full seriousness they demand right now? It's not just about ticking compliance boxes, it's about building trustworthy, robust, and genuinely future-proof AI systems from the ground up. Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We really hope this has given you some crucial insights to carry forward into your work and your strategic planning.